thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fuad Kasab. Hey everyone, it's Jo here. I'm back. I know, it's been shocking. I've been really slack with podcasts this year so far, but we should be back on track now. I've just gotten home from 3 weeks in Spain and Paris with my two eldest children, India and Simi, and we've had an awesome time. And I just wanted to pop in quickly and say hello before we start the podcast. We actually did an intro for the podcast while we were in Spain because I did try to get it up while we were there, but it was just all too much. It was like we would flat chat every day out road tripping and sightseeing. So as you can imagine, I really didn't get any work done. I took my laptop and carried it everywhere for who knows what reason. So next time I'll just leave it at home, right? But we had such a lovely time. And while we were there, like I said, we recorded the intro with our tour guide and good friend, Victor, there in South Spain. He was the best. He just took us all over the place and showed us a side of Spain that we wouldn't have otherwise seen. And we got to talk to people with him interpreting. So that was great. But yeah, he's followed Quirky Cooking for 7 years, ever since he got his Thermomix, and he loves to cook. So I took him a life-changing food cookbook and he was pretty chuffed about that. And we just hung out and had a great time. So we were having a really good chat while we were driving on one of our tours, and we were talking about, how Spanish people live and how they eat and their longevity and things like that. So I said, this will make a great intro for the show. So I twisted his arm and he chatted with us on the intro. So that's the first part of the podcast. We talk about that. And the second part of the podcast, the main interview, is with my good friend Crystel Poggioli, who's an occupational therapist and GAPS practitioner here at home. And she's going to be talking about kids and fussy eating. So tune in and I hope you really enjoy it. And I'm thinking next podcast I'll talk about traveling with food intolerances and allergies and special diets and how to navigate that when you're traveling, especially overseas, because I got so many questions from people on how do you what food can you take on the plane? How do you find places to eat? How do you cope with special diets when you travel? So I think I'll talk about that for the next podcast. So tune in again in a fortnight and you can hear all about that. All right. Thanks for listening, and I hope you subscribe to our show so that you can not miss any episodes. And I'll chat to you soon. Hey everyone, welcome to A Quirky Journey. We are at the moment traveling in Spain, and we're driving through what part of the...
We are right now in southern Spain, nearby Malaga, in a beautiful region that is called the Axarquía, between Malaga and Granada.
There you go. Straight from the mouth of Victor, our amazing travel guide and friend. I told him he's on my intro this podcast, and he's like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm like, come on. So he's agreed to be on the intro. So we're driving to a little town up on the mountain called...
Comares.
Okay. And we're driving through an area with lots of avocado plantations. Wow, it's amazing. If you haven't seen any of... India, get a photo of that. This is what I say the whole time. The almond blossoms and the avocados. Oh, look at that. It's so beautiful. So we've been traveling through Spain, doing a road trip for the last 2.5 weeks. We have nearly 3 weeks here in Spain, and including 2 days in Paris. Sorry, that's not Spain. And we're just having an amazing time. And I thought I would just send you all a little hello from Spain at the start of the podcast, and we'll just talk about a few things that we've been seeing and learning here. We've just been driving along talking about the food here in Spain, and it's really amazing, the Mediterranean diet. We absolutely love the food, and we've been through a lot of areas with the olive plantations, and we were talking about olive oil, and as you guys know, we're big proponents of using olive oil in your food and in your cooking. And Victor was telling us that the life expectancy in Spain is quite high. Can you just tell them about that as well?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, no problem. Well, I was reading in I mean, Spain has been always known for a very long life expectancy. I think right now for women, we are country number 3 in the world. And for men, I think we are number 9. I still have to double check. But I think women, if I'm not ground with numbers, right now in Spain, the life expectancy, it's 82.9.
Wow.
Which is one of the longest in the world. But it recently was released an article by the University of Seattle in Washington State talking about how it's going to be in the future. And they ended up with the conclusion that Spain will be the country in the world with the longest life expectancy. Wow. So it's quite interesting because it's kind of like surprising for certain people, especially since we receive so much tourism into Spain, so many tourists. They wonder why, if we smoke more than
there's
in
a lot
other
of
countries,
smoking.
A lot of smoking in
that.
Spain. Around 25% of the population smokes in this country.
Yeah.
Elderly and young people, no distinctions. If we drink more alcohol than some other countries, especially beer and the most popular drink in this country together with wine. Yeah. Why do we live longer than other countries? And they ended up in the conclusion that Spanish diet and Spanish way of life in general, it's the secret of this long life expectancy. To give you a few examples, they ended up with the conclusion that the reason is simple. First, we don't eat a lot of red meat in Spain. Okay. And our diet is very diverse.
You do a lot of pork though.
Yes, pork is very popular here, but pork depends the way you cure and you cook the pork.
That's right.
It's not
the traditional way.
But it's not considered red meat.
No, that's true. They do say it's the other
chicken,
white meat.
But beef, it's common, but it's not very popular in Spain. Yeah. Also, we eat a lot of fish, and especially white fish that contains not a lot of fat. Our diet is based on olive oil. Yeah. So we use olive oil for salads, for dressing fish, for meat, for cooking, for frying. So it's true that it's part of our basic things in our kitchen. Another of the secrets is the famous Iberian ham. These free-range happy pigs, or at least they're happy, until we send them to the slaughterhouse. But also...
And they're fed on acorns?
Acorns, correct.
Yeah,
we fed them with acorns and free range. So that's one of the secrets, of course, is the top quality, because we have different kind of hams.
And don't they take like 2 years to cure the ham or something?
That's correct. Depends the one that you're eating. They recommend around 24 months. I have seen some of them even for 30 months.
Wow.
And it's everything natural, in a natural way, so no chemicals or anything, and they just cover with salt, they hang it, and they just wait all these years, and the result, it's a wonderful meat.
And then there's the salted cod, which is also...
Salted cod, it's also quite popular here. It's very common to see that in the market and small shops in our city centers. And they ended up also with wine. Wine, it's also, they recommend a glass of wine a day, and it's also very common here. Yeah. To eat your meal with a glass of wine. Also the weather. We don't have to forget that vitamin D, if I'm not wrong, is the only vitamin that you get through the sun. And usually most of the country we can enjoy beautiful weather all year round. And also it's kind of like the way of life, like thinking, like I know it's a very common joke about Spanish-speaking countries like Mexico and Spain, like mañana.
Yes.
But isn't that beautiful to think that it's going to be a mañana? Yeah. Isn't it so?
Well, what we've noticed is how laid back everything is, and how it's very family focused. Like you go out at night and people are out and about with their kids and their babies, and they're sitting at cafes with friends with the babies and the kids in prams, and they're chatting, and they just take their time and enjoy themselves. And it's not like a rush. It's not like take away your dinner and rush home and eat it in your house. It's spend that time with your friends. And I think that's one thing that we've said to each other, India and Simi and I. We really have to take this home with us, because it's so easy to get very busy in our culture.
That's the great thing about traveling. It's the good thing about traveling, and that's one of the lessons that we have to forget when we leave our cities. We don't like to leave our comfort zone, our country or our city or our area where we live, but help us to appreciate what we have outside,
Yes.
but also appreciate much more what we have at home.
It's so true.
That's one of the wonderful things about traveling.
And it makes you, I guess it really expands your viewpoint of things that we could be doing at home to make our life more beautiful.
Absolutely.
Because you see other people doing it in other cultures and you go, why aren't we doing that? That's easy. We can do that. We can spend more time with our friends and family having special meals and being out and about and not stressing so much about the time. And and I think that laid-back lifestyle must kind of contribute to the long life. And also another thing we notice, especially in the smaller towns that we've stayed in, they're very hilly.
They are.
You don't see...
and a lot of steps.
You don't see anyone overweight. I'm sure they must be constantly walking up and down those steps and hills, and they can't gain any weight.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh,
and I forgot to tell you one of the most important secrets for this long life. Siesta.
Ah, yes.
Have you noticed that in the small towns,
I've always had
everything closed.
Yes.
Everything closed from 2 o'clock until 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it's so quiet. Unfortunately, we cannot do this in the big cities anymore. Like Madrid, Barcelona.
Well,
Malaga.
actually, where we stayed in Barcelona, maybe because we were in a less touristy bit, we haven't really stayed in touristy parts of town, so which is great. Mm-hmm. And there was a little Italian deli across the road from where we were staying in Barcelona, and the owner of our Airbnb came and introduced us to him. He said, this is my friend. And later on we went outside and we noticed he'd closed his shop in the middle of the day. Oh, pawpaw trees.
Yeah.
Cool. And we were like, he must have gone for a siesta. And then he came back at about 4, opened the shop up again, and was open till like 10 p.m. And we were like, wow, I wish we could do that in Australia. But what we've noticed is there doesn't seem to be set times for people to be open and shut.
No, it's not a set time.
So you'll see shops popping open at different times and closed and then open again. And it's kind of like...
It's a nightmare when they ask me, where are the opening times in Spain for the shops?
There's no opening times.
There are no opening times, all right?
If you feel like opening, you open. If you feel like having a nap, you shut.
Exactly.
I love
it. Exactly.
I was telling Fuad about it, and he said, we should have opened Quirky Cooking in Spain. We just, take some time off, have a nap. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. But, yeah, it's such a different way of life, and I've really
and as I told you, it's some of the lessons that we learn about traveling. As I told you, I'm sure you have seen things in Spain that say, oh my goodness, I don't like this and I don't like this. But this is the great thing about traveling. Yeah. Because you learn to appreciate much more. And the more we travel, the humbler we get.
Oh, so true.
That is, because we realize that probably, how far is Australia from here? I don't know, probably like 30 hours flying where we are right now. But you look the country and we are so similar in so many things.
Yes. Yeah.
But look at such a long distance. So with this kind of things, we realize that we live in such a small world.
We do.
It's so small.
We do. And people need the same things everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We need that community and the sense of belonging and the love and the healthy food and the fresh air. And it's just so good to see the way that people live in other cultures too, and to realise there's things that we can learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed. So some of the foods, I have to talk about food, of course. Some of the foods that we've really enjoyed. Let's see, there was the cheeses, the manchego.
Manchego cheese,
It's a sheep's milk.
Sheep, yeah, exactly.
Wish we could take that home with us, but they won't let it on the plane.
Unfortunately, no.
And the jamon, can't take that either. What was some other ones, kids, that we loved? They're not going to talk. They're sitting in the back of the car being quiet because they don't want to be on the podcast. Chickens. What was the fried pork belly? Is it chicharrones or?
Oh, chicharrones.
Chicharrones. Thank you. Yeah. Peter pronounced it wrong.
Chicharrones.
Chicharrones.
The right way is in Spanish is chicharrones.
Chicharrones. Ah,
because there's a Spanish R on it in the middle.
That was good. I'm a bit of an addict of pork belly. Look at the view. This is amazing. So, I'm just speechless at the moment because the view's too amazing. But wish you guys could see all this. But if you want to see some photos of where we've been travelling, just go onto my Instagram and look on the highlights of my stories, and there's Spain highlights. There's a lot, but you can flick through quickly. And if you ever come to Spain, definitely go to the south. Come to Malaga and look up Victor. He's on Instagram.
Yeah, we love Malaga.
We love Malaga. Is it all one?
All together.
All together
Yeah.
on Instagram. Look it up. He's the best tour guide ever. So you must make sure that you go on a tour with Victor. All right, guys. Well, I will let you listen to the main podcast now. It's with Crystel Poggioli, who is a occupational therapist and GAPS practitioner in the Atherton Tablelands back at home. And we talk about how to help kids with kids that have trouble with fussy eating, or they have behavioural issues, things like ADD, ADHD, even like autistic children, how to help them to eat well when they refuse foods. And she has some really great tips for parents, really good. So I hope you can listen to that and enjoy it, and we will see you when we're back in Australia. Bye. Thanks, Victor.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, Crystel. Thanks so much for coming on the show. So good to have you.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
We're just having a bit of a laugh because we recorded half the podcast and then I realised I wasn't recording.
So we know what we're going to say already.
Yeah, we're all practiced. Take two.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. See what happens when Fuad's not here. We missed you, Fufu.
Oh, dear.
Trying again. All right, so what we're talking about today is Crystel's work as an occupational therapist and how she uses a natural health approach and focuses on gut health as well, and how she can help families with really fussy eaters to begin eating well. And we want to sort of go into that sort of thing a lot. But first of all, we might just get you to tell your story, Crystel, and just share with our listeners who you are and what you do and how you got into it, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm a homeschooling mum, and that's how Joe and I first met each other.
About 10 years ago, I think we were in homeschool groups together with our kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Joe was like a bit of a mentor for lots of people homeschooling in our group. So, yeah. And so I'm at home with my 6 kids a lot, and at the same time I'm an OT. And I was telling Joe before that I kind of came to be an OT. It was sort of a little bit by accident, really, because I wasn't really sure what to do at the end of grade 12, which is like a lot of people. And I was really interested in art and interested in being a naturopath as well. And my dad was like, you know, he was quite traditional and he didn't want me to do art or to be a naturopath at that point. So I just sort of randomly selected something then. I didn't really care too much what I was going to do. So I sort of stumbled upon occupational therapy, but it turned out to be just the right thing for me. I think because it's such a broad career and you can really make it what you want it to be. So I've specialised in working with kids, and that's really grown out of my love of children. So I remember even when I was young, I loved kids so much that I was like the town babysitter and always had a tribe of kids that I'd be looking after or teaching how to swim and things like that. And then, yeah, I became interested in natural health as well. And it's only really since I've been having my own private practice, which is, it's 8 years now, that I've been able to blend those two together a bit more. So I guess using OT strategies as a foundation and then bringing a natural health sort of bent towards that and using down-to-earth strategies with families, lots of play therapy, and you know, lots of, I guess, not so much high-tech solutions, but sort of just the lower tech, down-to-earth
Which is what we need. We were talking about this in our last podcast. You go and get a diagnosis for your child, and there's sort of, you're given a bit of basic information, but so many parents feel so overwhelmed with the practical everyday implementing of that information, and that's where you guys are so helpful.
I think that's where what OT is all about, really. I'll often tell children and families when they come to see me, because it is a bit hard to understand what OT does, but really we're all about helping people with the tricky stuff and the stuff that drives you nuts every day, or the stuff that you wish was better, or that you wish was different, or that you wish you could cope with. That's really what OT is all about. So,
and how wonderful to have that support as an overwhelmed parent, just needing that day-to-day support. It's so good to have that.
Yeah, I think it's nice that it's becoming, just more accepted to be able to get support, because it's a really big job being a parent. And sometimes I'll say to my husband, I think I need to see someone who does my job. Of course. They just need to help me a little bit. Yeah, but I think it's really, it's something that we can all do with, because we all need help troubleshooting, and someone who's objective.
A fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, they can just give you these little aha sort of ideas that you're like, oh, yeah, sure, I should have thought of that. And it can just change the whole atmosphere of the place. So, yeah.
Do you want to give us some examples, like specific examples of the types of kids you work with and what you do, just to give us a bit of a picture?
So I guess it's really quite broad. But if I just think about my caseload and what's the common types of things that I see people for, I guess I see a lot of children who are young children, and we might be doing developmental assessments and looking at their development across the board. So, their fine and gross motor skills, cognitive skills, sensory processing skills, and imaginative play skills, all of that sort of thing, visual processing, and just helping them in their areas that are challenging, but leading them by the areas that are their strengths. I see a lot of children for things like anxiety and anger management. I'm an OT that's considered to be it's called a better access to mental health OT. So I do a lot of mental health work in my practice with children as well. So lots of things to do with self-regulation and challenging behaviours. And so I'll have some families who will come to me just for OT type strategies, and then I am also a GAPS practitioner, gut and psychology syndrome, which I think everyone listening would probably know. So
you're on the right podcast.
Yeah. So I sometimes see families just for GAPS consultations, and then other times I'll see families who want OT and GAPS strategies for their child's needs, and that's probably an area that gets me really excited, because those families, things tend to progress really quickly, and they become empowered very quickly, and they tend not to need me for a very long time. I might work with them fairly intensely at the beginning, but then I'll phase out much earlier than I would if they weren't using both strategies together. So, which is awesome. That's what I love.
Yeah,
I love not
working yourself out of your job.
Yeah. That's the aim of my game, is for them not to need me. So, yeah.
And when you are working with families who have never heard of gut health issues, they really have come in for just OT, are you able to show them how that's another section that they can look at, or how does that work? Is it more if they ask?
I'll often try and bring it up. I love Dr. Natasha's GAPS book, and probably one of the things I'll often say to people is, if you like reading, you could just have a read of this. You don't have to feel like you're going to have to do the protocol, but it will really help you understand what's going on.
Yes,
because I think
that's what I find.
Yeah, I think when I first read her book, it was probably the first moment in my career where I went, finally makes sense in my practice. And, because I was utterly confused about the great increase in things like autism and ADHD and anxiety and very challenging behaviours. It's changed a lot in the time I've been an OT. So, so I will often direct them towards that. I do have some families who are just not interested at all. And I have an overarching philosophy really that the parents are in charge and they are the authority for their family. So I always respect a family's perspective. So if they want to use medication or, if they want to do different things for their children, I respect their choice.
Yeah, of course.
And, I'm not going to be making them feel uncomfortable about that choice. So my aim's to be supporting them in the way that's going to work best for them.
And it is different for every family depending on, the season of life and how much stress is going on as to how much you can handle changing, in your world. It's little by little, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And there is more than one way to skin a cat, and it's not for me to really judge what it's like to live in their life, because I'm often only with their family for an hour at a time. So but then I have other families who say to me that they're really interested in improving their child's gut health. They might not be ready for GAPS, and we might look at ways that we can tweak things and, what can we start doing to improve their child's nutrition. So things like phasing out processed foods, increasing good fats, and, just starting to improve the microflora. So, just heading them towards GAPS, I guess. And for some families that is a really great approach, because they might then come to me in 6 to 12 months and say, do you know what, after doing that, I actually feel ready to do GAPS. So, So, and there's, it's a really exciting time that we're living in, really, because there is so much information in the mainstream and so much encouragement, and so people are learning more and more about it. So I might just make mention of it and plant seeds, and might find more information out somewhere along the way. And so I don't feel this pressure that I have to be encouraging them to do it right now, even though oftentimes when I'm sitting there with them, I'll be thinking, healing
that would be what would be hard.
Would help so much. So
but you've got to be ready for it, for sure.
Yeah, I have to.
Took me years.
It's not my journey; it's their journey. So I can't really push them to be doing what I think is best. We're walking together, really. So.
Yeah. Well, what I'm fascinated with is the way that you use your OT work to help kids with fussy eating. And I remember you telling me a while back that with a lot of OTs, as they bring the foods in, help them bring foods in, it's more, it's the traditional Western diet and the white starches and things like that. That's included in the diet, but you like to use the more healing foods and help them to bring those in. So I'd love for you to talk to our listeners about how you do that, because I know there's a lot of parents out there listening who really want to help their kids to have a more varied diet, but they have such difficulties with the maybe the textures or whatever it is, and they don't know where to begin to help them eat well. So if you could give us some ideas on that, that would be awesome.
Okay. Well, it's again, it's such an individual thing. Probably I'd say it's good always to keep in mind the bigger picture. So the bigger picture is that our microflora and how healthy the gut lining is will be driving us to eat particular foods. So I guess when you keep that in mind, and keep in mind that you're trying gradually to improve the health of the gut lining and to heal and seal it, and that will make it a better environment for increasing the variety of foods that they're happy to eat over time. Then you can just not get so caught up in the fact that they won't eat these beautiful foods that you've prepared right at that time.
You've spent hours.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been there for hours in the kitchen and, you know, they don't want your stock. But anyway, thank goodness for the freezer.
Yes.
So, yeah, like I said before, I do tweak the starting stage with some families. So sometimes it is easier to start with full gaps, or some families intro diet's not going to work. It depends a lot on the individual.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to think about, because sometimes it can be a little bit easier to be introducing full gaps foods than intro.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Another thing I do find helps, depending on the child and their age and their understanding, but I find it really helps to educate the kids about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you know, the language of kids is play. So even with older kids, I find that it's nice to explain it in fun, playful ways, to, you know, draw Dr. Natasha's picture of the gut lining and explain about the enterocytes and the microflora and things like that. And I'll play Nerf gun games with them where we're an enterocyte army and we're trying to wipe out Candida or something like that. Well, not wipe out Candida, because it's got a purpose too.
Yeah. Reduce.
But, yeah, we're just knocking it back if it's taken over the joint. So, and I guess remembering that you're on the same team with the kids. So, you know, they might be saying no to your foods, but if you see yourselves together looking at this issue of food and how to heal and seal the gut lining, you're not working against each other and they're not working against you. It can just help to remember that you're on the same team.
Yeah.
So another bigger picture idea I'd say is to be just thinking of what mealtimes feel like in your family and trying to do what you can do so that it feels like a happy, special time. So, and that's actually more important than what they eat at that meal. It's
I
more
agree.
important that it feels nice and it feels happy and it feels like you're connecting. And if possible, you're trying to eat with as many people in your family together at that time as you can. It's not always possible with our lifestyles, but
that's actually a point that our last interviewee talked about with kids with ADD, ADHD, anxiety. That family mealtime is so important.
Yeah, it is, and it's hard, you know. It depends.
Society.
Yeah, it is. It is. I find, you know, lots of families have people who are working long hours. But even if, so I guess, for example, in my own family, my husband's a farmer and he does work really long hours, so it's often that he's not having time to eat together with us. But when he is, it's, you know, it does feel extra special, and I know everybody will remember that we had lots of family times together.
And I find, because my husband shift works, and I find that, even when it's just, and like, all of my kids work now at some, you know, two of them are part-time and two of them are full-time. So it's kind of like this coming and going, but whoever is there, when you sit down together, you have those good chats and it feels, I don't know, it's much more fulfilling than when everyone scatters to their bedrooms.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So that's a thing to just be thinking about, because I guess that does allow you to then focus on connecting with them and enjoying sharing food together, rather than thinking, oh, did they eat enough broth, or did they eat you know, did they get enough probiotic foods, or so that would be something I'd say to consider. So I was just going to think then about the sensory aspects, I guess, like what you were talking about before, that some kids might be a bit uncomfortable with different sensory aspects of food, and that can be a reason for fussiness with food. So I do find that if there are sensory issues with food, I do find that once you've been in the swing of gaps for a while, you know, the sensory receptors will have detoxed and will have cleared and will be working much better. So a lot of those issues will resolve themselves over time, which is, you know, one of the really exciting things about GAPS. But it's often just in those earlier stages where it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
so,
how do you actually get them to start eating the healing foods? That's the scary bit.
Yeah, and so that's where, that's one place where I do feel like the ABA, or applied behaviour analysis techniques, Dr. Natasha does talk about them in the back of her book.
Yep.
And there's also some nice stories on the GAPS Australia website. And, you know, just talking about using a reward strategy for each mouthful, even if you need to in the early stages. So because often once they're through the first couple of weeks, they'll start to feel that these foods are making me feel so much better, and I actually want them. And again, it's that microflora has changed as well, and so they're wanting to eat those nourishing foods. So yeah, as much as I don't really love approaches that use rewards to, I guess, be changing children's behaviour, but this is one case where I think it does work well, because you're phasing it out. You know, you're actually doing some healing, and then you're going to be phasing those rewards out as you go. So
it's not a long-term thing.
Yeah, no, it's not a long-term thing, and it's just considered to be a short-term thing. So, so for non-verbal children, Dr. Natasha talks about using non-GAPS foods, like non-GAPS preferred foods, as a reward for each mouthful, and then increasing the number of mouthfuls they'd have to have before having the reward, and then just phasing that out fairly quickly. Yeah. And for verbal children, using rewards. So I have worked with a family where we did use, they had sort of little jar of wrapped tiny little presents, and that was used as a reward in the early stages. It was actually a family who'd been on GAPS for a number of years. They're a really great family that I've worked with for a long time, and they'd been on GAPS for a long time, but we worked out that the child needed to do a period of no dairy, and it was really, it was just, you know, that was devastating for him. So we actually used those reward strategies during that patch to just get him through those stages, and then, you know, we followed the reintroduction before he was able to introduce dairy again. Yeah.
And that worked well?
Yeah, it worked really well. Yeah.
Good.
And yeah, it was just for that period.
I know a friend of mine used the star chart type thing. Yeah, and she said, because her kids were quite small, and that, you know, once they got so many stars, then they had, you know, whatever it was, an outing or whatever it was. And she said that worked really well, and they just, like you said, keep getting bigger goals. So at first it was like, have some peas on your plate and not freak out. That was the first step. Like the second step was lick a pea. Hold a pea in your mouth, you know, just gradually increasing. So is that the kind of thing that you find you need to do with some kids?
Yeah, that's actually a really classic therapy strategy. Right. That's one of the ideas I was going to mention today is sometimes... No, it's great that you brought it up, because sometimes it is, you know...
That's slow.
If you're thinking about the whole lot of people's senses, so sometimes kids just don't even want to look at food.
Yeah,
they don't want to touch it. Don't want to
have a meltdown if you put it near them, you know.
Yeah. So, so a great idea can be having their own plate with their food on it, and then having an extra plate where they might choose to put 2 different foods, or even just one food that they haven't tried before. And they might be able to touch that food or smell that food, or or kiss it, or bring it to their lips, or I do like to bring play therapy in, so even having one of their toys there and feeding their toy. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah, sometimes just being really fun and playful with it is a great way of breaking down tension with children. So,
instead
and you'll know,
a tense situation, it would totally change it.
Yeah, because because even that, it can feel a little bit pressured and, you know, like, oh, mum really wants me to eat this pea. But then if you start playing games where you've got a little teddy and, the teddy's scared of peas, and, you know, the teddy gets terrified and runs away, and they'll just think that's so hilarious because they'll probably try and terrify the teddy with peas, or, you know, maybe even you or something like that. They'll just think it's so funny.
Yeah.
So usually you'll know you're on the right track with play therapy sorts of ideas if there's lots and lots of giggles. So, so that's one thing that I do like to do. So, yes, keeping in mind to try and be, you know, encouraging them to gradually expose those senses to foods and not worrying if it's just one sense at a time. It's good to go slow.
Yeah.
Especially if they're really, really anxious and stressed about trying new foods. You just want to take them gradually towards the edge of that place where it feels uncomfortable, but not into the edge where it makes them not over the edge where it makes them feel anxious and upset.
Yeah.
Around that edge, if you can introduce some play and some fun and some giggles, that's where you are usually able to extend that edge out further. So yeah, so that's I don't know if that made sense, but
no, that totally makes sense. It's really good.
Yeah.
And before, when we were recording, and I accidentally wasn't recording, we were talking about, you know, there's often reasons why they won't try foods, and you need to sort of look into that first sometimes. Did you want to talk about that again?
So were we talking about the textures there?
I think you were talking about the way sometimes they can't move the food around in their mouth properly.
Oh, that's right.
You need to keep an eye on that. Yeah, as an OT.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm trying to remember how we got onto it.
Well, that's actually one thing that OTs and also speech therapists, because this is an area that OTs and speech therapists both deal with, and sometimes together, sometimes separately, and it often depends which therapists have an interest in it. But, you know, some children, they might not be liking particular textures because they might not be managing them so well within their mouth, just even the feeling of it, the food. Other children, they might be having trouble moving the food around their mouth, so we use a lot of what's called lateral tongue movements, so side-to-side tongue movements when we're chewing and moving food around our mouth, and some children, that's difficult for them. So, you know, you might often see that for children who've got a bit of difficulty with speech and pronunciation and things like that. It could also be impacting on their chewing and eating.
Right.
So sometimes it can be that we just need to have a little look at how they're eating, because, you know, maybe we need to be changing the types of textures of foods, or helping them with those movements, or helping them with the sensory aspects of different foods to be improving that whole area. I guess even another example is sometimes children might have a really strong gag reflex, and so particular textures might trigger that gag reflex. So we might need to look at grading the textures of foods to make it more manageable for them, so that it's easier for them to swallow without triggering that gag reflex. And again, you can bring the play therapy into that then, so that you can be giving them a food that's getting towards their edge of triggering a gag reflex, and then doing some fun play therapy stuff right at that moment when they would swallow, so that they'll just forget about being scared and then just swallow and just learn to overcome the gag reflex that way. So yeah, there's I guess sometimes it is more about behaviour and just likes and dislikes, and that's where the ABA strategies and the rewards and the star charts and just being playful and all of that sort of thing
really help.
It can help a real lot. And then other times it is that the child's genuinely having difficulty managing foods in their mouth or managing textures, and they're just really averse to the feeling of different foods. So OT and speech therapists will often be looking at grading the textures of foods that we're giving children to help with various issues. making it easier for them. But
So
a lot of the
can you give us
traditional.
an example of the grading of foods, like what kind of?
Okay, so I guess to give you an example, I'm just thinking of a child I've worked with recently who was not able to chew. So he actually ate a wide variety of foods. He's done a bit of a period of gaps. His mum cooks really great variety of foods, but he tends to use a like a real tongue thrust. I'm trying to show you with my tongue, but he really sucks his tongue up to the top of his mouth, and that's how he squishes food. So he has Down syndrome.
Right.
He also has autism.
Yeah.
And he really sort of squishes the food with his tongue just up and down and then swallows it. So it doesn't.
So he's not doing that side to side.
Yeah, it wasn't going to the sides at all.
Mm-hmm.
So even with that, he was actually able to eat quite a wide variety of foods. You know, his mum would make quiches and things like that, and he was able to eat banana and all sorts of different mixed textures of foods. He really liked his food. So but yeah, when I saw him eating, he didn't really have any side to side movements, so none of those lateral tongue movements. His teeth weren't involved really at all. And so one of the first things we did was introduce two different textures of foods. One's called hard munchables, and one's called solid meltables. So those are both funny words.
Solid meltables, is that like chocolate?
Oh, yeah, sort of. More like meringue. Sort of one crunch and you're done sort of thing.
Yes, yeah.
So those names of those textures come from a therapy program called SOS, which lots of speech therapists and OTs use. And people who are using that program, they very traditionally will tell you to use things like Crustkits or Cheezels or I don't know. There's a whole lot of
just regular Western foods.
Yeah, there's a lot of really quite horrible things that are not helping your gut lining that are solid meltable textures. So, and hard munchables would be things that are not going to break down. You're going to be able to sort of put it between your back teeth and have a bit of a munch, but it's not going to break into pieces, so it's not going to be scary with pieces falling off and causing gagging or choking for a child who's not used to that. So things like a carrot stick or a piece of dried fruit or dried sort of jerky, or even things like snow peas or beans or cheese or things like that that they can sort of have a little bit of a munch and go, oh, you know, something's happening there, but it's not really threatening.
Yeah.
So we introduced foods of both of those textures for him, and when we gave them to him, we really put them between his back teeth, and we did a lot of massage of his cheeks to really stimulate that area, because he just hadn't had much input into that area at all. He's very hypersensitive to any touch in his face and mouth area, which, you know, that's a whole nother story, but it's improved a huge amount with lots of massage and different strategies. But yeah, we did a lot of massage when he was eating those foods, and within 3 months he's now chewing. So
isn't that awesome?
Yeah, so it's been very exciting to watch. He's had a great team. I can't take the credit for it at all. His mum and the people working with him in his daycare have just put in, his mum and his dad, sorry, they've put in heaps of effort, and
that's so
but
good.
yeah, it's really exciting to watch.
Yeah.
You know, he can enjoy a broader range of textures, and he can actually, so he's just starting to be chewing. So I wouldn't say that he's fully.
Yeah, but you've seen the improvement.
But yeah, he's actually able to chew things between those teeth, and
you're able to sort of adjust those usual recommendations for the foods that they use in the SOS to give them healthier options. That's what you often do, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, because I'm sorry, but I just can't.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah. It's funny. I have this memory of a long time ago when I was a young OT doing a joint session with a speech therapist, and it was to do with sensory aspects of food with this child, and she'd bought these really revoltingly horrible sort of really processed little tiny jelly things and all sorts of chips and things. And so she was trying to get him to work on different textures, and she kept saying, here, Crystal's going to eat one and I'm going to eat one. And she was really, really cranky with me after the session because I just kept going, I'm really sorry, but I can't. That was probably the moment in my career where I thought, I cannot use processed foods to help children with issues with eating. I just can't be part of it.
It's kind of like one step forward, two steps back, isn't it? Because you're damaging the gut, which is going to make the situation worse.
Yeah, it's all tied in. It's all tied in together, and probably even at that point in my career, I didn't really know the link between it, but I just knew that it wasn't good, and so I was just, I just couldn't really be a part of it, and I was thinking, no, there has to be a better way, and so I've probably just developed a little list of things. Probably the solid meltable texture is a bit harder to find things that are not processed, but when you start thinking GAPSy sort of things, you can easily come up with some ideas. And that meringue texture, even like a savoury meringue, is pretty easy. So, that's actually pretty easy to make, and you can make them savoury, or you can just make
What do you put in it? I'm just curious now.
Probably depends on the stage, but I would probably just even do sort of herbs and garlic or something like that. So, not much at all.
I'm just wondering if you can do a cheesy meringue.
Yeah, you probably could. I haven't tried that.
My brain's ticking.
But there you go. You could think of some good meringue ideas. Because with the sweet ones, I would just do honey.
Yeah.
And that's pretty easy. So, and freeze drying some foods. I haven't done a lot of that myself, but I've had families tell me about doing that as a solid meltable texture. So,
they get their own freeze dryer?
No, as in I think they just put things in the freezer and sort of just like.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and how it
and then melts. Yeah.
Yeah, and then So I haven't actually tried that myself, but
that would be the perfect texture freeze-dried foods, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So, it's probably something to experiment with a little bit as well. So.
Freeze-dried strawberries are yummy.
Oh, really?
Have you ever had those? Oh, they're amazing.
Oh.
I think I've had them. I think I got them at actually I had freeze-dried cherries in Tasmania, and they were the bomb, but they cost the bomb too.
Oh, well, that might be because there is this little section in our IGA where they have had these.
I'm pretty sure I got the strawberries from there.
Yeah, I don't remember which fruit I tried, but I do remember at the time thinking, oh, this would be a really good solid. And actually, you can get these like chicken broth chips.
That's true, you can.
Yeah, which I see now they've got one with macadamias in it as well, and I did try. I did try them. Yeah, they were actually really good, and they were when I ate them, I did think, oh, that would be a really good solid meltable sort of texture.
There you go.
Because a lot of kids who don't like different textures, funnily enough, they'll usually all like crunchy.
Yeah. I think we all crave crunchy, don't we?
Yeah. So that can kind of and crunchy's a bit hard to find in gaps.
It is.
It's hard to get that crunchy. Like pork cracklings are nice.
Chicken skin, fried chicken skin.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, yeah, you can get your chicken skin in bulk.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, so and then probably, you would already know lots about these sorts of things, but jellies are also another good thing that you can make that's often a texture that kids will like. So I do have some families where their kids will just have broth as jelly for a while. So,
especially if they don't like drinking a hot cup of broth, why not do it like a jelly?
Yeah. Or ice blocks. Some families do.
Blocks, or do you make like a chicken stock that's really mild without the salt and add it with fruit, or what do you do? for us?
No, the families that I've worked with who've done that, they have just literally made savoury ice blocks. So,
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, and their kids have been really into them. I don't love ice blocks, so I personally haven't been into them.
Yeah, I'd go for the jellies.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's that's another way to be doing it. So, yeah.
So basically you're saying for these kids that are really fussy, getting the different textures in is really important, and you sort of start with working on that, or?
I guess it probably does depend on the child, but I guess even if you just think to yourself, what are the sensory aspects of the food that I'm wanting my child to eat, because it might help you understand what they're not liking about it. So even if you just, as you're eating that food, you just notice how it feels in your mouth and try and notice the textures. So just the piece of food that comes to my mind is, say, a piece of capsicum, but we might think, oh, there's nothing too major about that. But if you think about that in your mouth, there's 3 different textures with that food. So there's the skin, which is quite shiny and harder to chew, and then there's the sort of that mushy sort of aerated sort of bit. Well, not really mushy, it can be crispy too. I'm not sure the word for that.
Yeah, it's a hard texture to describe.
Yeah, so but then when you chew it, there's juice that comes out. So there's lots going on with a food like that, and so some children might just genuinely find a food like that with a lot of textures and a lot happening, they might find that too much and too overwhelming. So if it does seem like your child's having problems with food because of textures, then I would say just pair it back to easier textures, so to foods that have, just one sensation, or then working towards 2 sensations at once, and trying not to have too many textures on the plate if it really does seem to be an issue for your child.
Yeah.
So, and then, like I said before, you might not have to do that for too long, because the more you heal and seal the gut lining, the better their sensory receptors will work. Yeah. And so hopefully they won't be as disturbed by textures of foods quite quickly. So
they'll start to expand their
I mean, it is happening for many children. They heal really fast, and it sort of brings to mind a child I worked with a few years ago. He was about 11, and he did gaps, and within 3 weeks his sensory receptors had changed so much that he was able to smell for the first time in his life. He'd never smelled.
11 years old.
Yeah, he'd never smelt anything, and his mum probably hadn't really even known. She knew he had a lot of sensory processing issues, but she didn't realise that he couldn't smell. But his first smell was wet dog, and because he was sitting with the wet dog, and he said to her, "What is this thing about this dog? And it's going up my nose, and what is it?" So she realised that he was able to smell, and so they went to the spice cupboard. They sort of explored the whole house then, smelling.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, he'd never smelt before, so that was really exciting. And GAPS constantly amazes me. That was just a few weeks, and those receptors cleared, and
unbelievable.
We're working.
I never even thought of kids not being able to smell. Wow, there you go. So that's like a sensory processing thing?
Yeah, I guess so. So he had a number of sensory issues, and they all resolved really quickly. Wow. And, I find some of those really unusual sensory issues will resolve really quickly with GAPS. And, you still need to keep doing GAPS for a while. They might disappear within the first, 6 months or so. And you still need to keep doing it until they don't appear when you reintroduce it. I'm sure listeners would know that. But it's very exciting how quickly sensory processing tends to improve. So
it's amazing.
Yeah. So, but probably that's kind of makes me think of the play strategies that we were talking about before, and just encouraging people to sort of think about how to be making things fun with their kids, and having giggles at the table as well, because having fun and having those giggles, that just calms down an area of your brain called the amygdala. And for kids with sensory processing issues and with anxiety, that area of your brain tends to be really overactive. So things that make you feel happier and those laughs and giggles will often just settle that area down, and that's a better place to be, enjoying and eating your food. So
I remember when I was doing so I used to do parenting classes and things for parents with tiny babies. One of the things they talk about is how babies are more receptive, feed better, sleep better when they're happy. And it talked about how you can see, the forehead, you can see the lines that are different when you're stressed or when you're laughing. You can see the difference in the eyes and the forehead. And it talked about with babies how they're so much more receptive when they're happy, and you can see that difference in their face, in their forehead, and they will feed better. And it's the same as they get older, isn't it? You're going to find them much more open to eating well if they're happy and receptive to you. And so the relationship that you have with your children affects all of this so much, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And for them to be finding things fun. And I know, I don't know about other mums out there, but even though I'm an OT and I do play therapy a lot, as a mum, sometimes it's actually hard for me to be playful and fun at those moments. You got a lot. You got a big load. So, but it's funny because probably two of the people who've inspired me most to be playful would be my husband and also my mum, and they've got some really fun ways that they've encouraged kids to eat at my table, and I've actually even used them in therapy sessions.
Oh, that's awesome.
One of them's called "Don't Let the Monster Eat the Next Mouthful." And that's a really fun game. My mum made that one up, and she'll load the spoon and say, now whatever you do, there's a monster sometimes comes to visit, and whatever you do not let the monster eat that mouthful. Else I'm going to get very cranky. And so then someone might whisper to them, quickly eat the mouthful when they're not looking. And so, then you can have a big meltdown that the monster's eaten all of their food. They find it hilarious. So
I bet.
Yeah, I would use that strategy in a therapy session with a family last week, and it was quite funny actually, because there were two children with autism, and I was doing it with one of them, and he absolutely loved it. But his brother was sitting there the whole time saying, "There's no such thing as monsters. Monsters are not real. You are just pretending, and you're trying to trick him." So it doesn't always work.
Depends on the kid.
Yeah, completely depends on them. But just having fun with it and taking the pressure off. And actually that reminds me another really big thing that I would say, and I see it all too often. I so often see families come and see me and they'll say, my child will only eat chicken nuggets and chips. And I'll think, well, how did that get to be their option, that they were able to eat just chicken nuggets and chips? So one thing I'd say to families who are doing GAPS or working on healing the gut lining, I'd say if you're presenting options and you have options in your house that you're happy with, then allow the kids to choose and trust their choices. Because if chicken nuggets and chips from McDonald's aren't options, then it's not such a big deal. If they want to eat 5 boiled eggs or whatever it might be, if it's an option that you're happy with, then just trust them and go with it. And because there might be a reason that they're wanting to eat,
craving that.
There might be a reason. So So, yeah, I guess in my own family, I tend not to be too worried if a child goes through a stage where they say to me, no, I don't really want to eat that particular thing. I don't really fuss about it too much.
Because there's so many other good options.
Yeah, there's lots of good options. And I know that they, you know, even if they say, no, I'm not going to eat anything, well, they'll come back to those things.
Yeah. And we do that as adults, don't we? You know, we'll for a while sometimes when I'm traveling, when I get home, all I want is lamb broth. And then I'll have it for a few days, and then I don't want it for a while. And then I want salad. And, you know, you kind of go through stages yourself with your body telling you what you need. And I think it's the same for kids. But like you say, you've got to have the options there, and the ones you don't want them to eat, obviously, don't have them in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Put the temptation in front of them. Yeah,
exactly. Because for those kids where there are significant gut health issues and where the microflora are out of balance, and those microflora are driving choices towards usually processed carbohydrates and things like that. Well, if you're providing those options, you're just feeding the beast, really.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go away.
Go forward.
No. So, yeah. But have you ever read that article by Dr. Natasha called One Man's Meat?
Yes. I love that article.
Yeah.
I link to it a lot. I'll put it in the show notes in case any of you listening haven't read it. It's so good. You can give a little overview of it if you like.
Yeah, well, basically she's just saying is, you know, trust what your body, especially as you get healthier, especially as your gut lining is healing, trust what your body's wanting to eat, because there'll be a reason why. And I know myself, as my gut lining healed, I felt like I really was absorbing the nutrients of food, and so I really did feel like I would be drawn to eating a particular food for a while. Like I might want a lot of mushrooms for a while, and or tomatoes or something like that. I felt like my body was really using the nutrients from the food. It still is, really. So, so I'm happy to trust that. Yeah.
That's so good. That's a really important point. I also wanted to mention when we were talking about having fun and reducing the stress around mealtime. I know when my kids were little, and because we were homeschooling and we were there all together, and sometimes some days, you know, the maths and the whatever and everything just got so stressful where you'd have kids having meltdowns, and to sit at the table and then force them to eat something they didn't want was just all too much. And so I used to just, on days like that, I would get a picnic blanket and we'd go outside or even go to the river or the lake or something, and we'd still have the same meal that I was going to give them in thermoses, or just if we were out in the backyard, we'd just take it out there. But laying it out on platters, on a blanket, in the backyard, under trees, and laying on the blanket with books and picking at the food was a completely different ball game to sitting at the table and saying, now hurry up and eat your lunch.
Yeah.
Everything would change, and I would just go, okay, we're just having a break from school for a while, and we're going to just focus on enjoying each other and being outside. And it would completely change everybody's attitudes, and things would go so much better after that. So sometimes you just have to think of a different way to do things, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And thinking about what feels nice and nourishing to you too, because we get caught up in what we're wanting to happen, and in the particular, you know, we really want them to get healed, so we just
on that end goal.
Yeah, but it's a process, and
you've got to have fun along the way.
How to enjoy it. It's funny because we're both sitting here in monsoonal rain.
Yeah, we are.
I really want to imagine having a picnic.
Well, we used to have it on rainy days. We used to have our picnic under the kitchen table.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, you put a big blanket and torches And it's so fun.
Excellent. Okay, my kids will think I've lost it, but we're going to have a picnic under the table today.
We want a photo.
Oh, dear.
So much fun. All right, well, we should probably finish off because we've been nearly an hour plus half an hour of not recording. I'm so sorry.
Half an hour of practice talking.
But we've had a great time, so I hope you guys have all enjoyed that. Crystal, do you just want to explain where people can find you online?
Yeah, sure. I've got a website, www.thewholechild.com.au, and a Facebook page, which is Whole Child, Whole Family. Mm-hmm. I'm based in Atherton, and I do face-to-face consultations and also Skype appointments as well. And I'm also happy for people to email me. I'm often easier to catch on email than phone. So, but yeah, my contact details are on that webpage, and you can find out more about my business and what things I'm into on there.
Awesome. And I'll put the links in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show. That was awesome. I learned heaps, and I hope everyone else did too. So thank you so much. And hopefully we'll get you on again sometime. No, it was great.
Oh, thanks, Jo. That was heaps of fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, everyone, have a great week. Bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.